Welcome to the Adulting Anonymous podcast. This is a platform where we help you foster the ability you need to face life's triumphs and challenges with input from a community of adults who have had similar experiences to you. I'm your host, Kudzai Mavitera, chartered accountant, podcast host, and fellow adult, bringing you a series of candid conversations with normal but extraordinary guests who would like to share their journeys and simply remind you that you're not alone. Like the old saying goes, it is through others that we develop into ourselves. And we hope that these conversations do just that, develop a better you. Today I have a special guest with me, and we are talking all things corporate to entrepreneurship. And if this is your vibe, keep on listening. I'm just going to hand over to her to introduce herself, and then, we'll take it from there. Welcome to Adulting Anonymous, Melissa.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. By way of introduction, I'm Melisa Sithole. I am a qualified chartered accountant who's recently taken the leap out of corporate into entrepreneurship. I'm the CEO and founder of Bulelwa's Home Deliveries.
Hectic! Yeah.
It's an e-commerce store that sells home cleaning essentials. So your toilet papers and brooms, mops, sunlight, the works.
All your cleaning jazz. Thank you for being here, Miss Bulelwa. And what inspired your business name?
So Bulelwa is the name my family calls me.
Is it? And it's your second name?
It's not on my birth certificate, but it's I regard it as my second name.
And what does it mean?
To be thankful.
To be thankful.
Yeah.
Hectic. Nice. Love to see it. I know I said in the previous episode that I'm going to start with a quote in every episode, but then when I'm with the guest, I'm going to give the honor to the guest to bless us with a quote. So what quote do you have for us today?
The beauty and ability is to be humble.
Hectic.
Elaborate on that. It's a quote that was taught to me by a very old man, Peter Nairn. I was working with him on a project back when I was studying part-time. And it was just something he said one day that I actually decided to get tattooed on me, but I'd forgotten the quote, so that's just another messy story. But that's essentially what he said. The beauty and ability is to be humble. And I love humility.
Hectic.
I love the virtue of humility. I think it's so beautiful to see in people, and especially when you're able and you're capable and you're doing great things, for you to still be humble and all of that.
Yeah.
I think it's something amazing to aspire to.
That is hectic. And also what I'm taking from it is that for you to be able to do something, you need to bring yourself to a place where you're willing to learn from different people, where you're willing to accept that you may not know everything, and in that lies your journey to ability.
Yeah.
Thank you. So tell us more about your corporate journey. When did it start? And, have you always been, I want to be a corporate girl? And just walk us through that.
So from a very young age, I knew I wanted to be a CA for all the wrong reasons. Well, maybe they're the right reasons. I'd open the careers newspaper and I'd see that financial managers were making the most money and they all had a CA qualification, and I decided that's exactly what I'm going to do. I wanted money. I wanted a job that gave me money. So I needed to get over the CASA hurdle first, and then I could be an FM, a financial manager, and I'll just be coining it. So that was my plan. And so I began my studies at University of Pretoria. I did my postgrad at UNISA, and I started my articles at a a big four firm in 2016.
Okay.
So that was when full-time work and not part-time and without part-time studying began for me. I think I knew, though, by my third year of university that I was doing this to finish what I'd started more than doing it because I wanted to be a CA.
Yeah.
And that's really what got me through to the end. I knew that there'd never be a point where I'd look back and not regret not finishing it.
Yeah.
So it really was more a principle thing than a career thing at that point. And so I finally got my qualification in my third year, so that was 2018, and I was an audit manager since until the end of 2020 last year.
Yeah. And what would you say what's changed? You mentioned that in third year, that's when you knew, I'm doing this just to finish. It's just, I've already suffered. I may as well go all the way. I relate. But then what do you think caused that change in thinking or change in desire or goal? What shifted the goalpost?
I've always been quite a creative person, as well as an intellectual person. I don't necessarily think that those two are mutually exclusive. And so I guess the more creative side of me had really started to wonder, what about me, and what are you going to do about this part of you that wants to be, braver than following a process, that wants to excuse me, that wants to be braver than following that process, that wants to, test your limits, that wants to do something with your life where people actually feel something,
Yeah.
and are impacted in a personal way. And although the CASA qualification, it's for the greater good of society. I think I knew very early on that it wouldn't give back to me emotionally, what
Give you the
I needed,
gratification.
to, if I'd gone into and stayed in an audit space, as opposed to stepping out of that. Yeah.
Okay, that's deep. The sense of gratification. I always say I really don't care if your financials balance or not. I'm joking. Yeah, but I don't. I don't.
Oh
Really
my!
don't.
Just fix it.
Just fix it. I don't care if the debit is equals the credit. Listen. Yeah, no, but I guess that's true, and I guess that's the difference between people's personalities. So some people can live, some people that balancing debit credit actually gives them gratification. For some of us,
Yeah.
people like you and I, it just doesn't work. So
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about the money. You mentioned that you saw that financial managers were earning more and they needed a CASA. Is that the reality? Like, knowing that you didn't become a financial manager, but you got to a point where you qualified as a CA without putting numbers in. Did the money match what your expectations were?
No. I think the money was enough, but I always had thought that I'd always have more than enough. And I guess when I look back at what 15, 14-year-old Mel, enough and more than enough look different, right, for her than actual 25, 20, 28, 30-year-old Mel. And so, to be honest, I don't believe that matched my expectation. But also, and we'll talk, and I know we'll probably talk about this soon, just around when I was looking to move out of the audit space. I also had another rude awakening where I was told that I'd probably need to consider taking a pay cut, on top of that. And so that was also something that I had to grapple with now, that I hadn't anticipated, or hadn't foreseen at the time. Yeah.
No, that's true. Like, it definitely gets to a point where, and you were considering the pay cut. You were like, I'm willing to take the pay cut.
I eventually had to make that call and say,
And
okay, I'll take it, because I did really want to transition out of the space that I was in at the time.
let's talk about, you mentioned that you're a very creative person. Did you ever not, I think there is a time where you would have done it, but why couldn't you pursue the creative side of you that brings you so much gratification, as well as the corporate side?
So a lot of people, when I'd handed in my resignation, so had a plan for me and how I could stay in audit and do my business on the side. But I'd been in audit for almost 5 years at that point. So I'd been a trainee for 3 years, and it was now my second year as a manager. And I knew that if I'd pursued that, the furthest I would have gone with my business was declaring that I had a business.
Yeah.
And I knew that I wouldn't have the freedom in terms of time that I would have needed in order to give it its full attention. And just being me, I'm someone who, when I'm doing something, I like to do it fully, and give it a fair chance, and know that if it doesn't work, I know that it's because I didn't I tried and it
You,
just didn't work. It wasn't
you gave it your
viable.
all,
I gave it
yes.
my all though. And I knew that with my job at the time, with the space I was in, with a global pandemic that was underway and that we have no guarantee that it would end at the end of 2020.
Yeah.
And we see now that it hasn't. The way of work, the way it was, I knew that I would never have been able to do both.
At the
Especially
same.
now, having done it and am being doing it, I know that I wouldn't have been able to juggle both
To juggle both.
effectively. Yeah.
That's powerful. Let's just talk about you left when did you leave corporate?
End of December 2020.
When had you planned to leave?
So I'd planned to leave corporate at the end of March initially. I had stayed on as an audit manager at the end of my articles because I had plans to go on a secondment in our Kenya office.
Yeah.
But by the end of the year, I decided and I knew that it just wasn't the right thing for me to do. And so in January, I had to have some tough conversations with my bosses, with a couple of people, and say, look, this is where I'm at now. I'm not going to Kenya anymore. And so when I spoke to them at the time, what I'd said to them was that I'd wanted to be out of the audit space by March. And I really believe that come March, I was gonna be gone.
Wait, you told your bosses that by March you want to be gone? Okay.
I did. Because something about me as well is that I always try to be as transparent as I possibly can, and sometimes it's to my own detriment, but I don't care.
Yeah.
I think transparency is very important, and people need to know what headspace you're in. There's a saying that someone once said, always be 100% honest, even if it's to your own detriment. And I think I live by that completely. So I told them that, I'm not going to Kenya and I'd like to leave by the end of March. So that's my timeline. And they looked at me and they nodded and they said, look, we'll see. You probably may need some more experience, to get into the NGO space the way that you want to. So I think they knew I wasn't going anywhere for a while.
Yeah. You're just like, oh, nice. You want to leave? Oh, that's cute, girl. You want to do what? NG what? Oh, that's cute.
Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation, something,
Yeah.
So I applied to some NGOs, but I really think that the experience that they needed, I just didn't have at the time. And so during the course of the year, I started looking for other positions, maybe in an accountant or FM role, just to really step out and expand my skill set. That's what I really wanted to start focusing on, because I was finding that my CV and what I know I can do in my head and with my day to day and with my abilities, it just wasn't translating. It wasn't translating as well as I would have liked it to on a CV. And so by September, I then made the decision that I wanted to leave, and if I had to create a post for myself, then
I was gonna
that's what I'm gonna have to do.
And so you did.
Yeah.
So you started building your business in September.
Yes.
So your business was built in I know it's still being built, but 4 months, September, literally 3 months actually.
Yeah.
You were like, damn.
Yeah.
What went into that preparation? Like, so from September, what was Melisa waking up and thinking about? What were you like looking at? What were you preparing? And I guess the first, actually, before we get to that, why e-commerce and why selling, detergents, mops, and etc. Why did you choose that route?
I think so. Both your questions are linked. So I'll go from what I was thinking and how I ended up where I ended up. So on a personal level, September had just come out of a really crazy season with work, really demanding, really stretching. And so what had happened was September, the long weekend was coming up, and I was heading home with my boyfriend, now fiance.
Excuse Chuck that in, won't you? Yeah, just a minor flex, boyfriend now fiance. I said it's okay. Chuck that
I
in there.
cannot deal
Sorry.
with you. And so what I said to God on the way down to Durban was that I'm not coming back to Joburg without answers from you. And just on a spiritual level, I really felt that God hadn't been as loud and as forthcoming as I would have liked him to be in 2020. So it was a very frustrated plea, like almost a demand. Like, if you say anything this year,
I will listen.
it'll be this weekend.
Yes. I mean, if you're gonna do anything or say anything, you got one chance. One tick is all you have.
And the things we do and the things we say. And so when I went home, I was really starting to now research, okay, not jobs, but what can I do? What can I sell? What could I provide in order to get out of this space that I'm in and get the skill sets that I need? And so I'd come up with a few ideas, and selling home cleaning products wasn't the first one.
Yep.
But in the end, I settled on that one because I knew that it was an essential, and I wanted to sell something. I knew that I wanted to sell something that people needed. That was a day-to-day need for people, and not necessarily a luxury product. Because I needed something that I wouldn't want to try and convince people that they needed it first, and then convince them that they want to buy it from me, right? But then also from an e-commerce perspective, I think that was just me also wanting to venture into that space. I know that that's a space where there's a lot of potential for growth. I mean, in South Africa, in Africa especially, but also I just I wanted to do it the way that my competitors were doing it, right? The big retailers, they're selling online, and people are online now. We live online, we buy online. It's safer to shop online, right? With the pandemic, and so that was never something that I even had to think about. I knew that I wanted to be an online store, and it was just a matter of where I deliver and what that would look like.
And then you're like an accountant, a CA. Where did you get the skills to do a website from? What did you do? I mean, they don't teach this stuff in. No. How did you get to that point where you equipped yourself with the? Did you do the website yourself?
Divine intervention. So I did it myself, but with a lot of help, and I'll even call a guy called Wanga called me, and I actually just call him my mentor for this process. So I know Wanga through a friend, but it turns out that we actually both knew each other because we were both at Tux at the same time. And this guy, he's an engineer, and he'd built an e-commerce site, and my friend told him what I was doing, and she linked us up, and literally we'd have boot camp nights where he would be like, hey, this is what you need to do. Okay, this is what you do on Facebook. You do this. You link your WhatsApp business. You need that. That's very important. You need this. That's very important. And he literally guided me through the entire process, and I would not have been able to do it without him, because I'd started doing my own thing on a different platform, and in the end I had to switch over to Shopify, where my website is hosted, and that switch over cost me time because I didn't know it, that I hadn't spoken to him before then. It cost me money, and so it was so valuable having someone who had walked the journey, who said, okay, stop spending.
Don't
Stop it.
Spend anymore. I know you need capital, but not like this, girl.
Like, so this is what we're gonna do now. And that was just invaluable, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without him.
You're highlighting a very important thing, that you definitely need, like, mentors. Who else was your mentor? Even if it's like virtually, or it's a person you're watching from afar and you're aspiring to to either be like, or you were trying to get certain work ethic vibes from. Who were those people for you, or who are actually?
That is such a good question.
And why?
Could I? Such a good question. And I think when I think about this, in this process, I can definitely say that it was the hands-on guidance from Wanga that really helped in the process. And other than that, there wasn't anyone else that I was necessarily speaking to, someone who'd walked this journey before, who was asking me, what have you done? What are you going to do now? Do this, do that, do that. And I definitely think it's because before this transition, I've never had to think about having, well, not think about having a mentor, but before this transition, with work, you're allocated like a mentor. In audit, you're allocated a mentor partner. And other than that, I've never actually gone out and sought someone out to be a mentor outside of the workspace.
I remember you even posted when you're like, what if you have a mentor, what did you consider before asking them to be your mentor?
Exactly. And so right now in this journey, I definitely realize that that is lacking for me
Yeah.
in that sense. And that's definitely something that I do need to start now actively seeking, right? Because you can join organizations, but you need to go out and find those people and latch on and say, please, help me.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely something that I need to do and something that I will be doing this year, because it's a lonely journey in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And there are people that have done this. It's not, it's not just me. There are other women that have done this.
Yeah.
That's something that I'm definitely thinking about, and just working towards in the current year.
That's deep. Yeah, you definitely need help going forward. Even if it's like watching YouTube videos. Someone was saying my mentor is Oprah, and people didn't understand that she could say my mentor is Oprah Winfrey because she literally has watched Oprah from a young age, and you know, she's looked at her interview style. She has observed how she carries herself. She has observed the type of preparation you would need to carry out an interview a certain way, and it made sense because sometimes that's why all these resources are there. You've got all the information, so even if a person can't physically agree to say, hey, Melissa, I'm your mentor, can even look at Elon Musk, or just look at, if you follow a person's journey closely, you start to identify maybe their success habits. You start to identify the different way of doing what makes them stand out, and you just try to adapt those. So like, I know it may be tough. People are like, I think especially now in a pandemic, people are tired, they don't have time, or taking up a mentee rather would not be one of the things they're prioritizing right now. But then, yeah, there's that option, or reading books. I mean, they're long. Oh, guys, they're long. They're long, but they're beneficial. So there's different types of mentorships that are available.
And actually, Beyonce, when I was on the call with her the other day,
What? With a straight face. Sorry, wait, let's start. No, wait. Actually, Nigerian movies have a lot of Beyonce. So which Beyonce are you talking about? Oh, yeah.
That's so valid. That's so true. Actually.
So many people want to venture out and do their own thing, but it's always like, there's this quote that's always flying around: your salary is the price they pay you to make you forget your dreams or to ignore your passion. What's your take on that?
I agree and I don't agree. And I'll start with why I don't agree. I don't agree with that saying when it's said in a tone that vilifies people who choose to stay in a corporate environment. The reality is, I mean, even the Bible says one can put one to flight, but two can put 1,000 to flight. There is something remarkable about working in an organization that has unlimited resources at your beck and call. You can be very effective in that space, and some people thrive in that space, right? And some people like working in their corporate job, and they're doing very well there, and they're making the impact that they want to make on their clients, and they're earning a salary and it's guaranteed every month, and they get,
And they're happy with it.
and they're happy. But I do agree with it from a personal perspective, where if I know that if I'd stayed, it would have only have been
For the
for the money.
Yeah.
And for me, that would have rung true and would have been something that I would have had to face on a day-to-day basis and every month. Exactly. So it's a yes or no for me. It really depends on you as a person and what you believe you're called to do, what you believe, where you believe you'll be more effective, and what you need to be to be effective in whatever space that you've been called to do or that you choose to be in. Yeah.
Okay, that's definitely true, and it's deep because I mean I think 90% is just like, oh, but if I move, who's gonna pay my rent? Who's gonna pay my car? etc. etc.
Mm,
How did you prepare for the transition financially? Did you save upfront? Did you
mm.
just say, you know what, if I die, I die. God, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want, it is what it is.
Uh,
Quote all the scripture. How did you prepare for it?
um, so as I've said, it was in September when when I decided to take the leap finally and just do my own thing. And that was after a lot of no's, a lot of rejections along the way, where I realized that okay, I know that I really want to do this, and the opportunities aren't coming, so I'm gonna do it myself. So that 3 month or 3 or 4 month period, I mean, doesn't really give you a lot of time
Time.
to save. But what I really did was I budgeted, and at the beginning of every year I do a budget for my entire year. I mean,
Okay.
our expenses don't really
Change,
change,
yeah, yeah.
too much. So I knew, okay, this is what I'm setting within my savings. This is what I'll be able to save for the next 4 months. I'm gonna get a leave payout because I've got a decent amount of
You did
leave
days,
days at
yeah.
some point. My pension fund's going to pay out. That's going to take me so far.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just putting together that information and seeing how far I could stretch it, how far it could
The
go,
accountant in you
what,
coming alive. Okay.
what I needed to cut, what fat needed to go. Yeah, Uber Eats is lonely these
Yeah.
days. It's emailing me like,
Uber
are you
Eats thinks
eating?
Uber Eats thinks you're dead. Like, Melissa, when they send those notifications,
Yep.
it's Thursday night, it's Friday night, don't miss out on. Like,
What are
no,
you having for lunch today? I'm like, I'm having real food. Okay. I
health is
cooked it
wealth.
myself.
Yep, definitely.
So it was definitely budgeting, and yeah, communicating with people in my life.
Mm.
Things like black tax, and
Mm.
those don't go away. And it's really just being like, okay, this is what I've thought of. Where can you help? Where can I help? What can
Mm.
we do together?
Mm.
And not leaving people in the dark on that process.
Yes,
That's important.
that's the communication aspect. To
Yeah.
say, yeah, that's actually very, that's cool. And your family received it well as well.
Yeah, I mean, they
Did you
received
get
it.
any naysayers? They're like, did you get any naysayers? Not even just family, but like the people that you told of the decision. Did they like, girl, you
Mm,
sure?
Surprisingly, no. I mean,
Mm.
my mother was definitely concerned,
Mm-hmm.
and she still sends me job posts to this day, and I'm thinking, okay, thank
Yeah.
you,
But
because
thanks, but
she.
no thanks. Yeah.
But otherwise, I think she realized, well, there's no turning back now,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, she had to accept it, and I've got a plan, and I
Mm.
think that gives her that reassurance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we talk about the entrepreneurship journey, did you have any fears when you decided that, like, that September when you knew, when it
Mm,
became urgent? Did you
mm.
have any fears that you had in terms of the move and just going forward? What fears did you face? Fear of?
So one obvious one would be fear of this not working out, or fear
Yeah.
of failure, and that's something that I guess had to talk myself out of, and having a support system really really helped, where people just were there to catch those anxious moments,
Mm.
those oh my goodness, what am I doing moments. But another interesting one was working in an organization like where we work. There are so many resources that you are
Mm.
bombarded with on a day-to-day, right? There's so much technical expertise. We have Skype. We can literally call an expert in anything at
Mm.
any time,
Mm.
and they will answer like this. I was really afraid to move out of that space.
Oh wow.
I was really afraid to not be able to call up
Yeah.
like a specialist
Yeah.
when I needed them, right? Which was just it was
That's
interesting for
bad.
me.
I don't
But
think I think of that.
I know, but it was so good knowing that if I needed information,
It was
it's
available at your fingertips,
available
yeah.
and quality information,
Yeah.
right? Whereas now, and as I've mentioned before, it's a lonely journey.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, there isn't my Skype. I have no contact on my Skype.
It's like, hello, today the date is,
So
full stop.
yeah. So that I think would have been were my two main fears.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's insightful. Let's talk about, you're now in entrepreneurship.
Mm-hmm.
You enjoying it?
Yes.
Is it tough?
Yes.
What's tough about entrepreneurship? I mean, you work for yourself, because I think people have a misconception. I think it's, let me do things for myself, like let me do my own thing and it'll be easier. What would you say is inherent in the corporate world that you're also facing in entrepreneurship journey, in your entrepreneurship journey?
So, I mean, common themes are definitely stress or anxiety.
Same level.
I wouldn't say the same level, but in a different way.
Okay.
So with corporate, you're running towards a deadline, and there's a lot of pressure that's put towards you to meet a specific date.
Yep.
With entrepreneurship, I mean, I put together my milestones. I put together when I'd like things to happen by when. But it's all on me. There isn't this huge collaboration that's happening. It's me, and it needs to. I need to get to a certain point in some way and be brainstorming and be thinking. And when things are moving a lot slower, there's a lot of self drive that you need to get over to get through the journey. And so it's not the same in any way, because at the same time, a big part of anxiety is feeling like you don't have time. I think for me, feeling like I didn't have time to do what I needed to do in the time that I had, but also that I didn't have time to do what I needed to do for myself, right? So that I could be mentally well, so that I could be spiritually well, so that I could be at peace and at ease, and physically healthy. And so now, with me being able to have more control of my time, I think that's why I'd say that the anxiety isn't as much, is there are more endorphins being released.
Yeah.
And just there's just something about having better control of your time and being able to plan your days in the way that you want, that I think relieves a lot of the stress that comes with the day to day of trying to get a business to work, and to reach certain milestones.
You have flexibility to do you, and you can actually intentionally work towards being a holistic human being.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one thing corporate, not all companies obviously, but I think that's one thing the environment robs you of, especially when you're working in a high performance environment where there's pressure to perform, pressure to please, pressure to deliver, and then you just find yourself neglecting yourself. So I'm glad that that's coming through.
But there are, there are other similarities as well. Things where, I mean, when you're working in corporate, you're managing a brand, right?
Yep.
And I'm still doing that now. It's not a corporate brand. It's my brand. It's my reputation.
But then how do you attach your personal brand to your business brand, or does your business have a separate brand and then there's a you brand?
So that's such an interesting question. So my business brand is definitely separate to my own brand, but I'm creating the content, because now when you're a content creator, you're a marketing director, you're everything.
You're everything, yep.
And so I'm creating the content. I know what excellence looks like to me. There's certain levels of excellence, certain criteria that I wouldn't want to be, that I wouldn't want to let up on, or not do to the best of my ability. And so there are those commonalities or those overlaps where the way that I work, the way that I probably perceive the world, the way that I'm creative, or the way that I choose to express myself would probably come through in some of the content and what I put out as a brand, whatever captions I use, etc., etc. But agreed, yes, the brand stands on its own at the end of the day. But when it's your business, when it's a small business especially, and you're the only one that the business employs, I think in this early time, there's definitely there are overlaps and kind of meshes that happen. But over time, as it grows and as I grow, there'll be that separation.
That's interesting. So there's a bit of you in your business. It's very hard to separate the two. But then I've worked with you, and damn. No, guys, she is excellent defined. So, and it's I think that's what's important. Like when you've got such an excellent spirit. I mean, the Bible calls it the spirit of excellence. Like when they're referring to Daniel. And when you have that, it's very hard for anything you put out to be, anything that's not, so I totally get that. The business has its separate brand, you've got your own brand, but then there'll always be elements of you in it. What are your success habits?
So I wake up at 4 in the morning every day.
No, you don't. Nah, you don't.
No, my Instagram profile says I'm a nap time enthusiast, and I mean it. I really am. I'd say my success factors are resting. I am more able to tackle whatever comes my way when I feel well rested, and that's 7 to 8, 9, hours in a day.
That 9 is after leaving corporate, hey?
Yes, exactly. But also I keep a diary of things that I need to do, and that's also a relatively new habit that's been consistent now. Before, it was just putting out fires everywhere.
Yes, you're always on flight mode, so you don't have time to be looking at a piece of paper to say, what dress I was gonna. I also I got a planner this year. And I got one in 2019, and then I didn't use it. And then last year I was like, waste of my money. This year I'm trying again, because apparently when you write things down, you actually become successful. So I'm trying it out.
Agreed.
Continue.
So a diary where I literally tick off what's been done, what still needs to be done, etc. And that just helps with keeping track of everything that needs to be done. Budgeting, like I've mentioned, critical. I'm literally planning for the year ahead and seeing, how far realistically this could take me. And I mean, there are always things that pop up, luxuries that you won't have now. When you're an entrepreneur, I mean, there's no company that's paying for my psycho membership, right? That's a personal cost now. So I factor those things in, and I see, okay, oh, that sucks, but it has to be done because that's important.
Yep.
And then I think I'd say prayer would be a big one. I mean, like I said earlier, your 2020, I really felt that God could have said a lot more to myself personally, and I really don't want this year to feel the same way that it did last year.
Yes.
Because I also know that a factor of that is because I also just wasn't listening as well as I should
I
have
wanted
been.
to say, sometimes when we say God is not near, or when he's not talking, or he's silent, it's usually because we're out there listening to other things and we're not focusing on him.
Exactly. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I chose to manage anxiety as opposed to just choosing to rest in God.
Yep.
And just listen.
Or to call up people at work and say, how do I solve this? Because you're like in the fire, like you're like, yo, there's so much smoke, you're just trying to put out all the flames, and you don't take a moment to step back and say, but God, listen to me. What should I do? Is this the right thing to do? And that's the thing, we miss the voice of God, and we miss those small signs he sends us, because we're so busy trying to do things on our own. And I think that's but then sometimes it's also the environment you're in. So if you see that the environment you're in is causing you to not hear the voice of God, then I guess removing yourself is probably a wise thing, I guess. So it's not exactly, it doesn't come with thought. It's only when you look back and you reflect and you're like, wait a minute. So this is what you're trying to, you mean you told me this long time, and sometimes he's silent because he already told you the thing. And you haven't acted on it. So he's like, no, Melissa, I told you start a business in 2017, and you're like, God, me, Kenya, God, me, London, God, me. How possibly can you say a business? And then you look back 2 years ago and you're like, but hold on, wait. You did say, and he can't, like, I mean, if a parent tells you to do something, you go back again and you haven't done it, they're going to tell you to do the same thing. You know, so sometimes the art isn't just going back to the last thing he told you and seeing if you acted on it. If you didn't act on it, chances are he's still waiting on you to do that before saying the next thing. So yeah, that's hectic. That's deep. Okay, you talked about sacrifice. This is my last one. If people want more questions, they should pay you. I'm joking. I'm joking. But besides that, the entrepreneurship journey, I think one of any journey rather, like when people ask me, should I become a CA? Should I go overseas? Should I, anything that I've done before that they want to? The answer is always yes, because my journey won't be the same as yours. Like if you start a company, if you go into content creation or whatever, the journey is never going to be the same. And if I tell you how to dodge all the things that I've seen flames with, I'm basically depriving you of that growth that comes with that challenge. But anyway, my last question is, what you mentioned sacrifices in terms of, like your luxury, your budget, and just financial planning. What other sacrifices have you had to make, if any?
I really can't think of any.
Is it?
It would largely be, it's largely financial sacrifices. I have an amazing community of friends, of family. I have an amazing significant other. So
You can call him fiance. It's fine. We won't do anything to you. Yeah.
And so there wasn't anything, like I didn't have to cut people from my life because
Like, bye haters.
because they're dragging me down, or anything like that. God has really blessed me with a full life.
Yes.
And just the most amazing people in it. It really, the biggest sacrifice really is financially, and also just financially ultimately.
Happy to hear that. So yeah, if I was looking to get into, like, to take the route that you took, and you had to, like, advise me, like, if you could advise anyone that's looking to make that transition or that move to entrepreneurship full time from corporate, what advice would you give them?
Firstly, I'd say to make sure that your plan is viable. Before I made that decision, and you'll remember, I sent out monkey surveys to my contact list.
Yes.
So do your research. I mean, that's a free platform, and you get to really know what's important to people, what do they want. So make sure that you've done your research and your idea is viable. And some things you only learn on the go.
Yep.
It's a huge learning journey, but at least at the very least, believe in what you're going to sell, or believe in what you're going to provide, and that it is something that people need or want, right?
Yeah.
I'd say don't do what I did and not have a mentor. Speak to people, get a mentor, someone who's been on the journey before. Reach out to them, or like you said earlier, I mean, follow them, right? I think that's really important, and it just makes the transition a bit more bearable, and that, look, they could do it, so I can do it as well. I'd spoken to my fiance's father. He's in business. So I'd spoken to him when I had the idea. And a piece of advice that he'd given me that has stuck with me just every single day is, don't conduct a business on a spreadsheet. And when you're an accountant or an auditor or in this field, it's very easy to get bogged down in a spreadsheet, but you're actually not looking up and seeing, okay, I've got the numbers, I've got the margins that I want, but what's business actually going on? What's business actually doing out in the actual world, right? Because the world and commerce doesn't exist on a spreadsheet. It's on other platforms. It's in the real world. So if you're an auditor, and if you're someone who is very numbers oriented, like I am, and like I was, that piece of advice just reminds me to look up, though. Look up, and what's happening in the markets. The margins are great, and it's good to aspire to something, but if it's unattainable, then you need to work backwards and figure out what could work and what actually won't. And also pray, seek spiritual guidance. be very in tune with how God speaks to you personally, because I think that's also a big frustration that I had. I wanted a voice from the sky, but God's never spoken to me in that way. Some people, it's like God's always speaking to you. You
Like
open the fridge and God says something.
Like, how do you do it? Where did you see him? And God, where are you in my fridge? Yeah, no.
But it's just if you are comfortable with that relationship and you've nurtured it, then you'll hear those God moments a lot easier and a lot better.
That is good advice. That is very good advice. I like the not running a business from a spreadsheet thing, because I think we can get to, we can get caught up in the numbers, and you miss an opportunity by not, like you're saying, looking up what's going on in the world, etc., etc. Oh, thank you for blessing us with wisdom and sharing your journey with us. I think people would appreciate this. I think more than ever is now, like now there's a lot of opportunities. What you need, one thing I actually love about your journey is how you are bold and you're courageous. Like once you set your mind to something, you like go for it, and don't lose that. Like keep on keeping on. Like let people look at you and be like, wow, when I want to be that confident in my decision that nothing, no fear of something going wrong, or no partner that's asking me to stay to say, oh, but you can run both. Nothing can sway my decision. And I think that's very admirable. Very, like, few people possess that. And I just want to encourage you to keep going.
Thank you.
Link yourself, girl. Like, tell people where they can shop your goods and all of that. I mean, if they've made it this far, they really want to know. So, yeah. We'll also tag it on the Instagram thingy.
So you can shop my product on www.bhdafrica.co.za, and it's all the brands that you know and love. It's the Omos, the Sunlights,
Handy
Andes. There's 2 ply toilet paper,
Yeah.
So yeah, shop it online.
And it's way cheaper than Pick and Pay, guys. I'm just putting it out there. So put yourself on. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Adulting Anonymous podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, make sure to subscribe to Adulting Anonymous on your platform of choice. Share with your community, rate this show, and give us feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Feel free to share your takeaways on social media and tag us. We are at Adulting Anonymous on Instagram and Twitter. Until next time, whether you walk, crawl, or run, it really doesn't matter as long as you're going forward.